And we're back for another predictions episode. This is part 2 of our 10 to 1st Constructors predictions. You've already heard 10 to 6. This is now 5 to 1. Sean and I swung for the fences in the first part, and I don't think that's going to be the case in this part because it's pretty straightforward, but we may see some twists and turns. Before we start, and we could get right into it, but I had a discussion in mind before we start to get us lubed up, as Hugh Grant would say in The Gentleman. Sean, and I was discussing this with some of my workmates recently. What do you think is the most, or the last beautiful Ferrari ever made?
And we're talking about road cars?
Road cars, yeah. You could say F1 as well. You can make a separate category.
I have to say this is a difficult question for 2 reasons. I have never been a Ferrari fanboy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every car person talks about the posters you had on the wall as a child, right? Everybody had a sports car that they had on the wall. Mine was never Ferrari. Mine was Lamborghinis, the Countach or the Diablo.
Gorgeous cars.
Love them. Or the Lotus.
That's not a wrong answer. That's a really good answer. It's you're right. It's not stereotypical, but it's a great answer.
So, but back to the question at hand. Ferrari. I think in general, the aesthetics have always been good. There's been a couple of goofy looking ones. Like, I never thought the Enzo was necessarily beautiful. It was very functional.
So that's a good point you're making, because I'm not saying pretty. I'm not saying good. I'm saying legitimately, like, we'll use the Clarkson model, which is the Alfa Romeo 8C. Is a beautiful car, but it's horrible to drive. It has no other purpose.
Agreed.
It's just good to look at.
Yes.
So, and we'll just use that to Ferrari, because most 80s and 90s Ferraris, you were the one to shine the light on this for me. Horrible to drive, unreliable as shit. You have to baby them. You can't even. I think you told me the F40 can't go up, can't go down a valley and back up a hill. So like,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I don't remember ever saying that.
if you go too fast down the valley and then back up the hill, it destroys the suspension. I think you told me that one time.
Interesting.
It's neither here nor there. The point is the cars are it's just shit to drive. It's made for specific purposes, and like the F40 is not a beautiful car by any means. It was a fast car for its time.
Yeah, and these prestigious Ferraris, so the F40, the F50, the Enzo, the LaFerrari, they're designed to be F1 cars for the road, and always have been. So starting with the F40, that was kind of their first real swag at taking an F1 car and making it for the road. And it was by all means a death trap.
String for door handles, yeah.
String for door handles. The interior was made out of Nomex.
What's Nomex?
Nomex is what they make driving suits out of. It's a fireproof material. So just be satisfied that in the event of an accident, the interior of the car will survive.
You won't. Yeah.
Precisely.
And that goes also for the Countach and the Diablo. In an accident, you're dead.
For different reasons, but yes.
Yeah. They're very fragile.
Well, again, back to Clarkson. The Diablo, the Countach, any of the Lamborghinis are great to drive, but they will kill you in the process.
They also say the same thing about the McLaren F1.
Yes.
Yeah. So then, yeah, just to get back on topic, the car doesn't have to be good. The car doesn't have to be functional. It just has to be a standard of beauty, not pretty. Like the Ferrari 360 Modena is a pretty car. I wouldn't say it's a beautiful car. The 599 is a pretty car. Not a beautiful car. I think it has too long of a front end.
The 512 was a very nice car.
I want to look that up right now. Why is it that...
The predecessor to the 599, I believe. It's the one from Bad Boys 2.
Oh, I thought that was the California. that Will Smith drove.
California, I believe, is the convertible.
Okay, that is a beautiful car. It looks a lot like a Testarossa, which I would say is one of the last beautiful cars.
No, it's not the one I'm thinking of.
512 was a Testarossa. So, yeah, you're thinking of something else. The Testarossa was a beautiful car. I have a hot take where I say late 80s, early 90s Ferraris were the most beautiful.
515.
515. Let me look that up. Yeah, I see the front end. I don't like that front end.
Not that one, though. The 515, there's been a couple of models of it.
Okay, show me the one you're thinking of. Okay, yeah. That was what I think the California became, or the Modena. That one.
Yes.
Okay, it's not bad.
Again, not beautiful, but a nicer one.
I'll say this: I think the 458 was their last beautiful Ferrari. I don't like any of the new ones really. Like I said, the 599 GTO had a good idea, but too long of a front end. This is, to me, what a Ferrari should look like. Like a compact front end, pretty, but then you look back at that ass and you're like,
You've got interesting beauty standards.
Which is weird because I'm more of a TMI. I'm more of a tip man myself with women, but yeah, this podcast is off the rails already. But anyway,
Yeah, I'm gonna reserve my comments on that, but
but yeah, it's just really to just get this conversation going. It's not really. There's no wrong answers here.
yeah, it's interesting that you pick that because I frankly think that the more modern generations of Ferraris have been absolutely abysmal. The 360 was a nice car. The 458 was okay. And I think it's gone downhill. Some of their current lineup is getting back to where it is. Like the SF90, there are versions of the SF90 that look okay. But like you and I talked about before we got on air here, they have this awkward thing they're doing with front ends now that looks like a giant bug deflector across the front of these cars, which is absolutely hideous.
It ruins it. It definitely ruins that front end, which is almost perfect.
Yeah. But like, I can look back at, say, the Ferrari GTO.
The 250. It's a pretty car.
To me, that's a beautiful car. Is it their last beautiful car? I don't know. I don't follow Ferrari that much. If you were to ask me this about Lamborghini, I could absolutely tell you what their last beautiful Lamborghini was.
I will let me just put the input on Ferrari. I would say in terms of just a car you want to look at with poor functionality, just pure beauty, the 92 Testarossa. Every angle of that car is gorgeous.
Yes, it is a very nice looking car.
Yeah. So then what? And so just to keep the conversation going, what to you is the last beautiful Lamborghini?
The 1970s Lamborghini Mira.
So you don't think the Countach is beautiful? You think it's pretty?
I think the Countach is a prime example of 80s supercars. That's my diplomatic answer.
I know that answer, which means they boxed it up a little too much in the 80s.
It is when there's a term that designers use in automotive called the flying wedge. And for 30 years, the flying wedge was the standard. If you wanted a fast car, it had to be a flying wedge because a wedge is aerodynamic. But that's exactly what the Countach looks like. It looks like a doorstop.
It's looks like something a kid drew and pieced together and didn't really know what he was designing. It looks funky in all the right ways, in my opinion.
Yes.
The Countach.
And don't get me wrong, it's beautiful in its own right. For what it was at the time, beautiful car. And it had a couple of iterations. So in the early 90s, it looked better, in my opinion, than it did in the 80s.
And the Diablo was very nice, too.
Yes.
But now I'm looking at the 1970 Lamborghini Miura. You're absolutely right. That is a stunning. That is a head changer, or whatever you call it, like a double take.
Yes.
You have to look at this car. Gorgeous on front end and back end. That back end is better than any Ferrari I've ever seen. And I love the Testarossa.
And I believe that is the first example of a transverse mounted mid-engine V12.
Explain that.
So instead of running front to back, so with the cylinders going left to right in the car, they've turned it 90 degrees.
Like this.
You're doing a whole lot of things with your hands that none of them make sense.
V12, transverse, so like this, instead of like this.
No. The cylinders are still pointing up in a V, but instead of, like, if you look at the mirror, it's got a very long hood on it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no engine under that hood. The engine's in the back, and the back end is very small. So they obviously can't fit a V12 running lengthwise down the car behind the driver. So they've taken that and they've rotated it 90 degrees. So it's your back faces one bank of cylinders.
Yes, so like this. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Like this.
Okay.
Cylinders are still pointing in the right direction. Just instead of running down the spine of the car, they run perpendicular to the spine.
Did that help with any reliability or speed?
It's a Lamborghini. Of course not.
Good answer. Yeah.
But it allows them to get the proportion that car has.
Okay. You've sold me on this car. God damn, that's pretty.
But I still haven't answered the question, have I?
Well, you did, which you're saying Ferrari's not my expertise. So I can't, in good conscience, answer it, is what you said. It's not your go-to choice of a car. So
Sure.
Yeah.
But I will give you the answer.
Okay.
And I guarantee you this is going to be met with very polarizing opinions. But I would say the LaFerrari is a rare example of a modern Ferrari that is truly beautiful.
Yeah, modern Ferraris aren't doing it. They're trying to meet efficiency standards, right? They're not really Ferraris anymore. They're like pieced together with BMW and Toyota.
No, not at all.
No? Okay.
A Ferrari is still a Ferrari. I think it's just they've lost their way because they're. You have to keep in mind all the beautiful Ferraris were built by these coach builders, Bertone, Pininfarina.
Mm-hmm.
These were individuals in shops hand beating panels. So no two Ferraris were the same. Sure, they were the same shape, but none of the panels were identical. And these same companies, Bertone, Pininfarina, they all have the input to new Ferraris. They're still involved in the design of Ferraris, but now they're big design houses, and it's not the same guy beating the panels anymore. This is all modern engineering and modern design, and they've hired other designers, right? So it's a name, but it's not the same essence of Ferrari or what Ferrari was. So I want to say the LaFerrari was designed by Pininfarina, at least the design house of Pininfarina, but it doesn't look like anything that would have come from the man behind the name. But to me, this is a beautiful piece of engineering.
It's an Enzo at the front and like a 458 meets Testarossa in the back. I like it. I see what you're saying.
It's an Enzo once they actually looked at it and realized, wow, this looks fucking goofy.
Which is typical to Italian engineering, like we talked about, which they get halfway through and they're like, shit, I have to fix a whole bunch of crap that I fucked up.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll give it to you. I'll still take the 458 as the last beautiful car. I'll admit, a stretch. If I really had to choose one beauty to just have in my garage and not expect anything when I drive it, it would be the Testarossa.
Mm-hmm. Would you like me to ruin the 458 for you?
Go on.
When General Motors set out to design the C8 Corvette,
You already ruined it.
they based the design of the new C8 Corvette on the Ferrari 458.
I've been saying that to you, where I'm like, it looks like a Ferrari and I don't like it.
Yes, and I'm pretty sure I've told you before that's because it was exactly designed off of a 458.
Just when you think GM can't get any worse. Anyway.
Down to the point where GM purchased several of these to benchmark not only the looks, but the performance. And don't get me wrong, I have nothing against the C8 Corvette. It is a great piece of machinery for the price tag that it has. But it does kind of ruin the 458.
It ruins both cars. American cars just need to stay in their own lane. I think they need to, if I'm honest, take a step back and just make worse cars that their customers like. Because trying to be modern is not working.
I would say the C8 has done well for them. And frankly, it's pulled them out of the Stone Age.
You're right, but like it's probably excellent under hood. It's probably way more reliable than that Ferrari.
No.
Wow. They don't even have that. Well, that's what I'm just saying. Like, everybody likes their 60s Mustangs. Just try and make versions of that don't break down. That's what I would say. You're not going to produce European cars.
No. No matter how much European tech you cram into them.
But for some reason, Ford in Britain seems to be amazing. Because it's Cosworth.
No. No, it's not.
Not anymore?
No.
Oh, okay. Anyways. Well, that's 18 minutes of us talking about that. We really like that. Okay. Anyways, regret nothing. So I finished last episode. 6th, I said Haas. So I'm going to give my 5th. You ready?
Yep.
Williams. And then I'm just going to stick with what I had on my list, even though you did make a good argument for them coming 9th. I think they're trending in the right direction. They gave up on last year, so they looked really bad at the end of the season. But I think it's because they were focusing on this season. I think Colapinto was the sacrificial lamb, so that Sainz could come in and run riot on this season. I think there's going to be a lot of points up for grabs, and if anyone's going to get a lot of points for this team, it's going to be Sainz. They finally have 2 experienced drivers. Albon's been there a while, and I think Sainz is where he belongs. And I can see him getting a buttload of points. And unlike you, I think 5th could easily be 90 to 100 points. Whereas you're thinking 5th is probably going to be close to 200. So that's where we differ. I don't think they need to get a lot to finish 5th. Vowles is a problem. I don't think he's as good as everybody thinks he is. But even Steiner did good in his 3rd year. Which this is now Vowles' 3rd year. So Steiner's 3rd year, they came 5th. I think we'll see the same for Williams. Not much to say. It's a bold prediction. Do I see a podium for Sainz, which is what he's aiming for? No. But I could see a couple top 5s.
Okay.
I unlike you, I think he will be the better of the 2. I don't think Albon does much this year. But we'll see. And I'm open to the idea that that's wrong.
You heard it here first. He's open to the idea that he's wrong.
New year, new Nick.
Not accepting that he's just wrong. But we'll give him that.
Give your rebuttal.
I've given my rebuttal in Williams being 9th.
Fair.
Like I said, I think they will score points, and I think they will score a decent amount of points, but I think the field is too competitive for them to pull themselves off the bottom in their current state. Primarily because I think you're absolutely right in that Vowles is the wrong person.
We talked about it a lot last season. But, what is it? A blind squirrel gets the acorn every now and then?
I prefer the broken clock is right at least twice a day.
That's because the cuckoo clock went off.
All right.
I had a good rebuttal, but I've since forgotten. Once again, in our predictions episode, whiskey is playing a favor. Playing a role.
Was it the predictions episode last year?
Oh yeah, with the wild turkey. We went. That was a 2.5 hour clusterfuck.
Yeah, if you haven't listened to it, go back and treat yourself to that. That was.
We cut out a half an hour of that episode, and still we were wild.
Was it only half an hour?
I think it was like 15 minutes. It was something where I'm like, wow, we cut out a lot, and still it was 2.5 hours. Still worth a listen to see how far we've come. I think we've gotten a lot better at presenting.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. Williams 5th. We'll see. So you are now 5-4.
Now, this is where I start to struggle. And the question I'll put to you, Nick, is do I really go for it? Or do I stay more conservative?
Okay, I think I know where you're going. And I want to say this to you. I was going to go for it too, but I decided not to. So it depends on if you want to swing for the fences. It depends on if you've had enough rye. If you had bourbon in you, you would have already done this.
All right, I'm going to do it. Mercedes is fifth.
Yeah, listen, it's not as bad of a prediction as you're thinking.
I don't have the faith that Antonelli is there. The minor glimpses we got of him last year didn't prove much. Russell, we all know my opinions on Russell. True. I sent Nick a very disturbing meme the other day, which just reinforces my point that I don't think he's a real human being.
I texted you back. Why is it staring at me like that? I should have capitalized it. That's not a human being. Post it to the Philosophy Instagram and show everybody what we're talking about. Holy shit.
Yeah, that might actually get us our first lawsuit. Oh. Anyway, the way he looks has nothing to do with his driving. It just drives me crazy. There's something about him. But I also don't like the way he drives. So I think Mercedes is up shit creek with two drivers that really won't amount to much.
In a car that's hard to navigate.
Yeah.
For 7-time champion Lewis Hamilton.
And that's just it. George seemed to get on top of it and was okay towards the end of the year. But even at the end of the year last year, it didn't seem to be great. Unless I'm misremembering.
He won Las Vegas. That was a 1-2. So the car was on it then. But once again, specific situation. Cold air.
Very bizarre track.
Yes.
So, barring that, I don't know that they have a great platform under them. They seem to be more confident in it, which is good. But I think everybody else is going to do better.
And to your point, they came fourth. It was a isolated fourth with 400 points, right? And Hamilton and Russell got 2-something each.
Right. And they came fourth in a way that they finished in the races, right? In the races, they were always kind of on their own. Not really racing anybody, just there. 20 seconds in front, 20 seconds behind, no man's land. Lucky to be fourth.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how they finished too, is it not? Where the other guys were fairly ahead of them, and their competition behind was not really close.
No.
So it was a decent finish, but they didn't really have to try.
And that's what I was getting to, have to try. Do you think Antonelli in his first season can get 200 some odd points?
No.
And yeah, to your point, Oscar Piastri in a good car that, struggled at the beginning, but half the season only got 91.
Right.
That's Oscar Piastri, which we all have faith in. I've already given my piece. You can go look at my my solo episode for the first episode of season 2, which is The Kids Aren't All Right, where I say the mistake with Antonelli was made when they skipped him over F3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you.
No, that's fine. I think it's a worthwhile thing to talk about. And I'm not engaging with your solo episode because I haven't listened to them. I'll leave it there.
Good for your mental health. Yeah.
Yes. So every once in a while, I'll finish a podcast. I'll have my earbuds in, and a podcast will finish, and Spotify will try and force me your content. And as soon as I hear Steiner Files, I cringe, and I have to change the...
We're on the same team.
I can't listen to you bitch about Steiner anymore.
I left it with him. That was it. Like I said in that episode, that was it. I've been good this first philosophy episode.
You have. So I'm going to say that given my reasoning for Williams being 9th, in that the pack is going to be much more competitive, Mercedes won't have the luxury of being lost in no man's land.
Wow.
Their competition behind will be closer, and their competition in front will also be closer. So there will be more pressure overall. That pressure will wreak havoc on Antonelli.
Mm-hmm.
George will lose his shit because he'll realize that he's not that great, and the team will fall back.
It's a great prediction. I wanted to do it. I didn't. I was conservative because I think the car is good enough.
Okay.
But there is going to be a lot of points up for grabs in my mind because Antonelli will not always finish in the points. So you're absolutely right there. I think Russell will push them into fourth, but it's not going to be good enough.
So, me saying that they will fall back into their competition, who do you think I have as their competition?
It has to be V-Carb or Racing Bulls.
Exactly.
So that is like you and I are complete opposites on that thought process then.
And now that I'm saying Racing Bulls is going to be fourth, I'll get into why I think you're absolutely wrong.
Okay.
So last year, preseason testing, there was a lot of fuss made by Zach Brown about Red Bull shouldn't have two teams. They shouldn't be allowed to run two teams. This is absolutely not what the intent is. All that nonsense, which quickly died after the first race because they weren't challenging McLaren. So nobody cared. But what Zach was afraid of was that V-Carb moved some of their engineering to Milton Keyes to be in the same building as Red Bull, to be able to utilize the resources that Red Bull has, right? They have to operate as two different teams by the regulation, and they can't share designs outside of what is allowed, right? So teams are allowed to buy certain parts, certain listed parts can be purchased. And that was the intent. V-Carb should buy as many parts as possible from Red Bull, but you still have to make a chassis, which means decisions you make on that chassis design are going to impact everything around it. So we saw last year that it was pretty much status quo for AlphaTauri, Toro Rosso, V-Carb. Okay, fine. When the car was released this year, everybody lost their minds over the livery, the turkey teeth, like we talked about last time. It's a great looking car. Nobody bothered to pay attention to what they've done to the bodywork on that car. There are a lot of elements of that car that look like last year's Red Bull.
Okay.
To me, what I'm seeing on that car is they've gone for the design route that Red Bull had last year. But I doubt they've gone to the point of just saying, let's copy last year's car.
Because it had a million problems.
Right. So they've got the same people working in the same facility, access to the same resources, and I guarantee you they're talking to each other.
For sure.
Everybody is. So to me, what it looks like is they've taken the general design philosophy of that car and said, okay, we know this, and this went wrong. And this is what they think is going to fix it. So that's what we're going to do. They've pointed them in a direction to say, hey, you can go copy that car. Oh, and by the way, these are the areas we had problems with. You fill in the blanks. It might backfire, but I think potentially between Yuki and Isaac, there's enough there to get a decent amount of points.
There's definitely enough with Yuki.
If the car is as good as I want it to be, and again, I'm just going to put it that I want it to be that good. I don't know that it's that good. Mm-hmm. It's too early. We're not at preseason testing yet.
And even testing can't give you a real picture.
Right. I don't necessarily think Isaac Hadjar is the next great driver, but I think he's hungry enough to want to push. He doesn't have Franz Tost to reel him in Yuki did.
That's a big one.
But hopefully he's got enough general skill to get through it. And we have seen, there have been a couple instances in the junior series where we've seen how fast Isaac can react. I want to say it was him in the tunnel in Monaco coming up to Miata, I believe.
You're absolutely right.
I don't know how the hell he even saw the car before he reacted. The kid has very quick hands. If he can properly leverage that without losing his mind on the radio at every minor inconvenience, he has potential. So I think he can score decent points with that alone. but he will never live up to the potential he has if he doesn't get himself under control.
Which is what Toss did to Yuki.
Yes.
Toss is gone.
Yes.
And just to be devil's advocate, if it is Red Bull's car, it had a sensitivity that only Max Verstappen could grasp.
Which is why I hope it's been one of these, hey, this is the part of it that worked, go fix this side.
Could they, just like once again, devil's advocate, could they be sacrificing VCarb to help understand the problems with Red Bull that may come up early season? Do you think they are using that to say, okay, let's try this. If it works for you, we'll do that. Or if it doesn't work for you, we know to keep going in the direction we're going.
I can't say because I haven't seen enough of the Red Bull car to see if they've changed significant amounts. I don't like the Red Bull livery in general. To me, it's just boring. But it also hides a lot.
That's a good point.
Lots of dark colors, and where there are flashy colors are in areas that it doesn't matter. And I think that's a very strategic thing that they've done. So you can't tell if they've changed a lot. I also haven't spent a lot of time looking at the images. So they may have gone a completely other direction, which then rules out your hypothesis. If they have taken the same direction, then yeah, that might be what it is. But then they also risk bringing up this nonsense again with the other teams that it's no fair that they're running two teams.
As we're going to talk about soon, I imagine, I don't think that they care anymore. Because like you pointed out last season, that talk went really quiet after Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I made bold predictions this year. You just made the boldest prediction of all.
Just wait. I still don't know what my top three are going to be.
I think you do. I think you have an idea.
I know that there are 3 teams left.
I like it. I just have no faith in Hadjar. I have faith in Yuki, like I said, but I think they'll sabotage him. We've seen it. We've seen it happen before. We've seen the Red Bull win 19 of 22 races, and VCarb was almost last.
When they were 2 distinctly separate teams. So, to the comment about sabotaging Yuki, there's absolutely no reason to do it. They've been very clear that Yuki's not getting a seat anywhere else, right? They gave him a chance in the Red Bull at the end of last year, and they admitted he did really well.
And gave great feedback.
Right. And they still didn't choose him.
Why?
And you know what? That's fine. If that's the decision they want to make, at least they've made it. Right? This is the Doohan thing all over again. If you're going to make that stance that he has to prove himself, just get it done with. And they did that with Yuki. They went, oh, shit. Yeah, he is pretty good. I still don't want him. And that's fine. At least now he knows his place. At least come contract renewal, because he doesn't have a contract past this year, he knows this is not it. Whether Racing Bulls wants me next year or not, I don't necessarily want them. And I'm sure that's going through his head right now, that I have a backer in Honda who is not with this team anymore. The team clearly is not going to give me what I want. Why the fuck am I staying?
Question for you. If he does get this team to 4th, does Austin Martin sign him?
That is a great opportunity. And I do not think that will happen.
But that's exactly my point.
Unless Honda really does something that I don't think they have the money for, no.
To buy out Lance Stroll.
No, they don't even have to do that. They just have to do what they've done with Red Bull. Like, we know that Honda is paying a significant amount of money to keep Yuki there. That's the only reason why he has had the opportunities he has. And he's done well for them. He's not a paid driver in the sense that he's useless, but is paid to be there. He's being paid. His sponsors are paying for him to be there, but he's actually performing. That's reasonable.
This goes to my theory in the last episode where he wasn't performing. They used him to push out De Vries. Remember, there was all this talk, oh, look how consistent he is. He's taking over this team. He had 2 points to kick out DeVries. They don't have a reason. They have no one to kick out this year. They have to actually kick him and Hadjar out in my mind.
Yes. And this is where Yuki has to make it so that they don't have that excuse.
You're right.
But they're still not going to take him. Racing Bulls may offer him an extension, but then Honda's money has nothing to do with it at that point.
He would. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Because Honda's not going to have an engine in that car. So that means he becomes an expensive driver for them because he's currently not costing them much. So Honda would have to make it worth Lawrence's time for Lawrence to fire his son. And I don't care how much of an evil villain we think Lawrence is, how much of a Bond villain we think he is. I don't see him firing his son.
He's not that, no.
So he's not going to fire Alonso, this perceived god of a driver.
He should.
He agreed. He should. He absolutely should. But it's not going to happen.
Aston Martin finishes 8th, and Yuki, as you're predicting, gets this team to 4th.
I would love it to happen.
I agree.
But frankly, look at Lance Stroll's performance last year. He was lucky to get 10th, 9th place in a car that had business being in the points. And no one's even talking about it other than the fact that, hey, wait, everybody wants him gone, but there's no rumors that he's ever going.
Law VS pointed this out on Aston Martin's website. Lance Stroll's cap, they've hidden his number. They hid it underneath the rim. They're kind of hedging their bets that he might be gone. I know that look you're making. It's not likely.
You're connecting dots that don't exist.
You're right. I agree with you. Just to your point, I almost interrupted you, and I'm sorry. We're having a really good conversation here, and I like it. Yuki would have to finish 4th, I think, in order for Racing Bulls to keep him with Arvid Lindblad.
Arvid Lindblad.
However the fuck you say his name.
You said it great last episode.
Yeah, I'm a little bit deep on the scotch right now. Arvid Lindblad.
Yes.
Who is, I think, guaranteed in 2026. Leaves no place for Hadjar.
Refresh my memory. He was F3 but got promoted to F2 because of the rookies that entered F1 this year, right? So he got a couple of races in F2 last year.
I think the last 2 or 4 or whatever it is, the last 2 races, he was 4th in F3. Nothing special. Max was 3rd in F3.
Yeah. And this brings up a topic, and I just want to get it on the list of things to talk about. We need to talk about outliers and being good enough for F1. So I don't want to go into it right this second, but just keep that in mind.
Outliers being good enough for F1.
No, outliers and what is good enough.
Okay, here, let me write that down. We were supposed to talk about something else, weren't we, this episode? Oh, Ben Solomon. We'll talk about that, Ian. By the way, just stay tuned. I know we're piecing this together. We're also going to give our prediction for who we think wins the Drivers' Championship. Just one. Outliers and who's good enough for F1?
What is good enough for F1?
What is good enough for F1? Not Oliver Bierman. If you listen to my solo episode, I gave us a challenge, which is to find real terms between the 2021 Haas and this year's Haas. Mm-hmm. So find a coefficient. Essentially, you and I have to calculate a proper, I guess, coefficient or statistical analysis.
Yep.
Because I think Oliver Bierman's going to be worse than Nikita Mazepin in real terms.
Right.
That's a tough one for us, I'll be honest. I really like what you did. Mercedes 5th and VCarb 4th. It's bold. It's highly unlikely, in my opinion, but I'm glad you're swinging for the fences. So I could easily see Mercedes 5th. If, like I said, if Haas had Bottas, Ricciardo, or even Bottas Ocon, I would happily put Mercedes 5th. Because I think we're both in agreement that Russell and Antonelli are a letdown.
Yeah.
And what Russell's place in F1 is past 2025 is going to be an interesting topic for us next year or this coming season. I like it. So you did 4, so I have to do 4-3. Or do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think we're good for that.
Okay. So I already let the cat out of the bag, but Mercedes is 4th. And I think they'll be in no man's land again. I think by the grace of Williams and Haas just being inept, they'll keep 4th. But I have really no faith in Antonelli, and I'm curious to see how George navigates this season. There's not much else to say other than the last time he was team leader was 2021 Williams, which was good, but not as good as people really remember.
But Nick, he got that Williams to second place.
Mm-hmm. How many laps in that race?
2 real laps?
Yeah.
Like that?
A rain-canceled Grand Prix.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was a qualifying effort.
In the rain.
Yeah.
Which then got cut short when Norris absolutely binned it.
That was a scary crash.
Yeah. And I remember seeing that exact same incident in GT3. So road cars. Lamborghini went in the same way in the same conditions as Norris did. And I remember seeing that crash and asking myself, how the hell does that happen there? And then you see it happen again, and you're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, now I start to understand how that happens.
You can aquaplane really easily in Eau Rouge.
Yeah, but it's more so how did he hit the outside wall? And it doesn't seem like it should be physically possible, especially because it's a bus ride away from the track. But holy shit, when those cars let go at full throttle at the top of Eau Rouge, that's what happens.
When you carry speed, yeah, anything's possible. There's not much else to say about Mercedes 4th. However, I will say this. I can see Toto Wolff being fired or being forced into the background for what he did this year.
Do you know what Toto Wolff's position is?
He's the owner, part owner, something like that?
He owns something like 33% of Mercedes.
I can see the board coming together and being like, you took this team that was so far ahead to 4th consistently, and you fucked up the development of what could have been a generational talent. And saying, enough. Step back or we publicly destroy you.
I don't see it happening, and I don't see it happening for a few reasons. One, he is very close to the board of, well, he's on the board of Mercedes, but he's very close to the owners of Mercedes. He has a lot of respect within the group as a leader. He takes accountability for the problems. And from a cultural standpoint, it tracks. I don't want to speak to German and Austrian culture because I don't know it well enough. But from what I'm seeing, it doesn't seem like there is any genuine pressure to him on it. I get that's what you think. But I don't know that anybody else is saying that. Anybody else that matters.
I hate to use this analogy because it's overused these days. But nobody challenged Hitler until it was too late.
That analogy doesn't work here.
I'm just saying.
Toto isn't trying to take them somewhere they don't want to be. He's trying to turn around what ended up being a turd.
He's making it worse.
He's not making it worse. He's made it better. When you look at it empirically, they started off this new era of car on the back foot. And under his leadership, it has gotten better.
Can I disagree with you quickly?
You can disagree all you want.
3rd in 2022, 2nd in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
4th in 2024.
Ferrari and McLaren got better in 24.
They didn't.
But this is it. Yes, they've continually started off stepping back, and we talked about that last year, right? If whatever Mercedes has done has dragged them backwards at the beginning of the season, but they've always improved to be better. So at the very worst, they've stayed the same over the course of this generation of car. The rest of the teams have caught up. So I'm not saying that the team has improved year over year, but they're making the best of a decision that was made early on that has plagued them ever since.
And you're saying it's not necessarily his fault.
No, it's not.
Somebody has to fall on their sword. And eventually I think they go up to him and they say exactly that, like, take a step back.
What I will say to you is go listen to Toto Wolff's interview on Armchair Expert podcast, and you'll get a good understanding of Toto Wolff and his mindset behind the whole thing. He is a consummate professional in the sense that he's a businessman, right? He's not an engineer. He's not a technical person. He's a racer. He's a businessman. He knows what he's doing, and he knows that where they are is not good enough, right? This isn't a, hey, it's not good enough, but I don't know what's happening, so we're not going to do anything kind of Gunther Steiner nonsense, right? This is, yeah, it's not good enough, and it needs to be better. He's not the one that can physically change it. He's the one that has to put the systems in place. And he can put those systems in place, but if the people aren't there to do it, that's another problem. And they have lost a lot of people, which then raises the other question that may support your hypothesis of why is he losing the people?
We'll see. Let's put a pin on this and come back to it mid-season.
Yeah.
Because I'm intrigued. If Mercedes is that good, if Antonelli is that good, I might be wrong. But if they're that bad, we may see some calls. Anyways, who do you think is my 3? So there's 3 teams left in my eyes.
Knowing you like I do, it's got to be Ferrari.
Sean, you do know me too well.
Because nobody hates Italians more than the Italian sitting next to me.
A half-breed for everybody who's watched the Underworld series.
And the only thing he hates more than Italians is the other half of himself.
Hey, if we want to get canceled on YouTube, you say the other half. So let's keep that quiet. Listen, I am a man of meritocracy. So
this is not starting well.
That's why I have to keep quiet on the other half. Anyways, it's not that I hate Ferrari. In fact, I love Ferrari and I don't want to see them. I can't stand when people destroy themselves, which is why I stopped cheering for the Italian national soccer team that I've talked about before. Ferrari has wrapped itself in the Italian flag when it needs to rewrap itself in the Ferrari flag. And that's an important distinction.
Mm-hmm.
They need to rewrap themselves in a flag that represents winning and racing. They've become too Italian to recognize where they're going wrong. They think the job is done. They think they've done everything they needed to do. They keep acting like they're winners when they're not winning. They need to recognize that they need up and down, stone cold killer winners in every part of their team. I made such a big deal at the end of the season, and you rightfully pushed back on me. I will admit, you rightfully pushed back on me last year when I said, why the hell are they going to sign Zhou Guanyu as their reserve driver? And yes, in your defense at that time, you were saying, stop talking about the Schumacher family and Mick Schumacher. You're right. So I'll say this. Signing someone like him who you know cannot step into that car and not do anything speaks to people who don't have a winning mentality. They need fucking killers. They need Michael Jordans in every position. They let Matteo Binotto walk away. They let Andrea... Why the hell is Andrea Stella at McLaren doing that magic when he could be doing that magic at Ferrari?
Mm-hmm.
So what the hell is Zhou Guanyu doing at the 3rd position in? When you brought up a great story last year at some point of Luciano Berti going to Fiorano, setting the record. What did that do?
On wet tires.
On wet tires. It inspired Michael Schumacher to beat him.
Mm-hmm.
That was when they were killing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that mentality anymore. And it breaks my heart. It does. It breaks my heart. It's why I don't cheer for them anymore. They have a bunch of people who think who seem good on the outside, but if you delve into it, it's not coming together well. It's not a bunch of winners. They have Lewis Hamilton at 40. Where was this signing? Where was this going after him when he was in his prime? Why didn't you throw the world? Why didn't you throw a blank check at him in 2019?
Allegedly, they did.
Blank check?
A big enough check.
I hope that story's true.
This is the comments that have been made by Lewis Hamilton and Toto Wolff and everything else is that Lewis was all in on the Mercedes. Even when he was at McLaren, he was partially at McLaren because of Mercedes. Because at that time, they were partners. Mm-hmm. Right? Mercedes helped him get where he was. Niki Lauda talked him into leaving McLaren to go to Mercedes because of what that relationship meant. Lewis is nothing if he's not loyal. He spent his entire career dedicated to Mercedes. He knows he's at the end. So now he's accepted the blank check. Right? So I wouldn't get too caught up about he wasn't there in his prime. He didn't want to be there in his prime. Because frankly, in his prime, he was winning with the only team that could win.
The only team that could deal with him, because it was just so far advanced. We know he's not a developer. He's not a person who can develop a car forward. We saw that in Mercedes the last couple of years. What I'm saying is, it's too little too late for Ferrari, and they have two drivers that, in my opinion, are equal. And they have this mentality like, okay, they're just going to keep scoring points. But if the car is not good enough, neither of those drivers can fix it. Whereas, say, a Lewis Hamilton-Carlos Sainz combination could have.
Possibly.
Sainz, we know, does help a car forward at times. I just think there's this delusion in the team this year. They think they've done it already. They think they have everything they need, and it's just going to happen, and it's just going to magically appear. And I think they're going backwards by a significant amount. They should be happy with 2 wins this year.
There is a good chance that they go backwards, yes.
Not Lewis's fault. And that's just the one thing I want to say about this. I think he's the top driver of the two, and I think he does get their only win this year.
Okay.
We will see. Do you have any other points about that? Yeah, you know what? I'm going to keep the Schumacher name out of this, Michael's name, because I've talked about it enough last season. So, yeah, that's it.
So, you mentioned they have to stop wrapping themselves in the Italian flag and wrap themselves in the Ferrari flag. And I think it's a very apt thing for you to say. When was it that changed?
Okay, well, there is a specific point. Can I say it?
Yes.
2006.
No, not at all.
You're going even farther back? 1980s?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No,
Enzo?
not the 80s. This would be the 60s, 70s. I forget exactly when it was, but when Ferrari sold the company.
Or almost sold the company to Ford?
No.
Or sold it to Fiat?
They did sell the company to Fiat, to the Agnellis. Who runs the company now?
Elkan.
Whose grandmother was?
An Agnelli.
Right. And we talked about this actually before getting on the air. On the air, like this is fucking radio. That Enzo was not an engineer. Not an educated engineer. You know, he was not capable of designing cars the way that they should have been designed. Let's put it that way. That didn't stop him from trying. So some of the documentaries, some of the movies that have been made try to embellish his ability to do so, which is just wrong. He was not great. And he had a lot of predefined notions in his mind of what the perfect car should be. And nobody could change that. Nobody could tell him that he was wrong. The prime example is the engine had to be at the front. Mm-hmm. The engine had to be at the front because the horse pulls the cart, which is the stupidest fucking thing when it comes to physics and vehicle dynamics.
No thought of balance, no thought of stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Distribution, yeah.
You want the engine in the middle. You want the weight to be centered. Now, the engine can still be in front of the driver and be in the middle, as long as it's behind the front axle. There are different ways to do this. But the generally accepted best practice is the engine goes in the rear. It's the shortest distance between the engine itself and the wheels that it's driving. In a rear-wheel drive car, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It balances the car better. It makes for better dynamics, better suspension characteristics, the whole 9 yards. Enzo wanted nothing to do with that. Right? This was Ferrari wrapped in the Ferrari flag. I build the car I want because this is the way it should be. And I agree with you. That's where Ferrari needs to go back to. This is how we need to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Drop the nationalism of it all and go back to this is how it should be. They have people there that are able to do that for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right. Everybody that has been involved in Ferrari F1 has said the same thing. It is different than anywhere else in F1. And F1 is such a small group of people that the large majority of people that work in F1 have worked for Ferrari at some time. Right? You said it. Stella, Binotto, Jacques Claire is currently at Ferrari. He was been with all the other teams. We have
Aluni Bravi,
Laurent Mekies.
Yeah, it's all there.
All there. Ross Brawn.
Yes,
was BAR, Honda, Braun GP. The group is not that big, and they all say the same thing. Working for Ferrari is a different experience. It's a national experience, which then means you have the weight of the nation on you. And the weight of the nation is not just there's pressure to do better. The weight of the nation is an expectation that it has to be done this way.
Mm-hmm.
And I hate to say it, but that way is just wrong.
Yeah.
They can't get it done.
They haven't got it done for almost 20 years. You're right.
And I'm not saying that the way Enzo did it was right, but you have to get away from the nationalization of it all and say, fuck that, we're going to do it this way. Because this is how it should be done.
And it wasn't because of Enzo that someone like Niki Lauda comes in and says, this is all wrong, here's how we're going to win.
Right.
It wasn't because of Enzo that someone like Michael Schumacher says, here's how we're going to win. It's because they were so focused on winning that they're like, fine, let it happen. But the nationalism comes back in, and there was a story recently. Once again, he's bragging about it. Luca de Montezemolo comes out and says, yeah, I signed Kimi Räikkönen on purpose behind Michael's back because, quite frankly, him and Ross Brawn had too much power at that team. What the fuck were you thinking? You're winning.
But that's the Italian nonsense of it all.
Exactly. You would rather have this focused on this Italian way than understanding that it's the Italian way to win. At least that was how I was raised. That's how a lot of people my age were raised. But it's a fucking lie.
Yeah.
And it's becoming more evident by the year, and I think this year is no different.
Yeah. And I'll bring it up again. This is where I think the conversation about outliers comes into play when we start talking about Michael Schumacher and Max Verstappen. So, I'll make my prediction for number 3.
3 and 2.
I'm going to put Ferrari in 3 as well. Because I think the car is going to be good enough. I think Hamilton still has enough skill to get it there.
Completely agree.
I've seen the Ferrari car this year, and I've seen some analysis of what they've changed, and I think it's directionally correct. Some of it's actually pretty clever, which I haven't been able to say about Ferrari in a while. 2, this is a tricky one.
Just to add to your 3, Hamilton looks invigorated.
He genuinely looks enthusiastic.
Which is good. So it means he will have a few good races. What I wonder is the part of Ferrari that he's not ready for, the lull, the summer nonsense, as I used to call it, that Michael navigated.
When they make a decision in the wrong direction and then don't realize that they've made the decision, yes.
Exactly, or reliability issues.
Yes.
Charles could not navigate it. Let's see how Hamilton does. Yes. That's all I'm going to say, yeah. So who do you got for 2?
I don't know.
You want me to give you my 2-1 to help you?
let's do that, and then hopefully the discussion of those choices will help me with mine. Yes.
Okay. It's straightforward. There's not much to say. So that's why I think I should give my 2-1 and then let you do yours. Red Bull 2, McLaren 1. Now, all I have to say about that is that Red Bull should be 1. Mm-hmm. They had a huge advantage going into this ground effect era. I think they discovered something towards the end of last season that's going to give Max a good car, good enough for him to do a lot of damage with. Mm-hmm. He got 437 points on a down year. I don't think it's going to be a down year per se. They won't dominate the way they did in 2023, but I can see Max doing some damage and getting probably 500, maybe even 550 points himself.
Okay.
Lawson is another problem.
Yes.
He knows he doesn't belong there. Red Bull knows he doesn't belong there. That's a power play between Horner and Marco. And Marco, like I said in my solo episode, stepped into the boardroom one day and said, sure, Christian, we can take your drivers, but you're going to have to stand up for them and have big balls to stand up for them. And we all know you don't have big balls.
Yeah.
Based on the dick pic that was released for early in the season last year.
In all fairness, there was no balls in that picture.
I know, I'm just making a joke, but like,
if you're going to make a joke, at least make it accurate, Nick.
I'm just saying he was humiliated, and Marco basically said, yeah, we know you don't have the biggest dick in this room, so you can't make the decision.
Are you implying that Helmut Marko has a big dick?
No, I'm saying the biggest dick in the room.
This is going way off track here.
Remember that episode of Entourage?
No.
With Babs?
No.
No, okay. Anyways, everybody who watched Entourage knows what I'm talking about. We all know, Babs, you have the biggest dick in the room, so how about you go first? Anyways, she was a woman. Yeah. Marco wants Lawson there, Horner doesn't. Horner made it clear throughout the season. But he lost capital because Ricciardo was lackluster and Perez was a disaster. Mm-hmm. So Lawson was pushed in there by Marco. Horner, I think, said sure, because he knows he's going to be a complete fuck up. It's a tough car to navigate. No one else has navigated it. Albon and Gasly couldn't, and Gasly was way better in the junior category than Lawson ever was.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Lawson's going to be really bad. And I think they're going to allow it to happen so that Horner can get his power back. That will cost them the constructors.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's the closest you've gotten to saying I'm not wrong. That's my thought. And then McLaren, they're steady, they're good, they're solid. They're going to score a lot of points. I'm curious to see who is the breadwinner. Is it Piastri or is it Norris? That I don't know. I'm curious to see.
Yeah.
I think they'll score probably a few more points than they did last year. But the only reason they'll win is because Lawson is a fuck up, not because Verstappen is a fuck up.
Yes. Agreed on that one.
So yeah.
Okay.
2-1 for you. Are you going to go with McLaren too? Do you have faith in Liam Lawson?
Abso-fucking-lutely not.
So it did help your decision.
Well, I knew I didn't have faith in Lawson. I don't. And it's not that I don't like him. I think he's a perfectly competent F1 driver. People are still going to refer to him as a rookie. Now, officially, nothing on the F1 website or the broadcasts have referred to him as a rookie because he's not. 11 races over 2 seasons. He's no longer a rookie. Nobody should be making the distinction that he needs time or experience. He's had 2 seasons.
Technically.
He's now in the big leagues. He's on the main team. He's in a championship-winning car. He needs to perform. He needs to be under the same level of scrutiny that Sergio Perez was.
Wow, I like that.
Okay?
Good for you.
He has the ability to do good. If he is not capable of doing it, he does not deserve another season. Red Bull cannot afford to fuck around any longer.
You're absolutely right.
Okay? If they have a car that cannot be driven by 2 drivers, they may as well run 1 car. Save themselves some money.
That might be the case this year.
They're technically allowed to do it.
Wow. That's a good point. The counter argument is he still hasn't raced in Australia.
So what?
How did Red Bull let this happen?
I keep seeing this come up. Oh, he hasn't raced. He's not fucking Australian.
The point
What does it matter?
The point I'm trying to make is the reason you have a junior team is so that when you enter Red Bull, that's not the case. You're not a rookie in that sense. You've driven every track. The last time they did that was Albon. It didn't work.
Listen, I guarantee you the guy's been in a fucking simulator around Australia. Yeah, it's not 100% analog, but it's close enough, and he's a professional enough driver that if he uses the excuse that I've never been here, he should be fired on the fucking spot.
He might.
But that's my point. If he uses that, no. You have 11 races under your belt in equivalent hardware. You've been in the simulator. I guarantee you he's been in the simulator for more laps around that track than he's raced in F2. Okay?
You're not wrong.
That's not an excuse. If he uses that, he needs to be sacked.
Who do you think replaces him? Do you think there is a replacement mid-season?
I don't. Because they're so invested in this fucking kid and they think he's the next best thing. But they cannot afford to have another season lost to a lackluster second driver. It's 2 seasons in a row Sergio has fucked them.
He made up for it towards the end of 2023. But you're right. 1 full season of just god-awful.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that they have legitimate competition in McLaren and Ferrari, they cannot afford that nonsense anymore. If he does not perform, this genuinely merits a switch to Yuki mid-season. If for nothing else, then it's not going to be worse.
Which is why I talked about this solo. It made so much sense to start Yuki for the disposability factor.
Yes.
Oh, we don't need him anymore. Yuki's no good? Okay, let's try Liam now.
There would be nobody upset if Yuki started and moved backwards mid-season.
Mm-hmm. He probably would have been okay with it.
Because at least he got the shot.
Yes.
Like, yeah, there are diehard fans that would be like, oh, it was unfair. Whatever. Fine. Everybody's got their diehard fans. But realistically, everybody who's looking at it goes, oh, fuck, he got a shot and he blew it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As long as it was a legitimate shot. And we're not talking Sergio Perez legitimate. He doesn't need 4 seasons.
But to your point about Sergio, the problem was he couldn't properly affect the car or give good feedback in a way that was helpful to Red Bull, because he essentially said, we need to change the whole car to help me.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Bull was like, no, that guy's winning us a championship.
But also, you can't change the whole car. You can't design a second car mid-season.
Correct. Whereas Yuki could have said, okay, here's where I can be helped.
Right.
That's all you needed. If Yuki was in that car to start the season, I would put Red Bull number 1.
Sure. So, I think we're agreed. Our top 3 is the same.
So Ferrari 3, Red Bull 2, McLaren 1.
Right. So, I don't have much to say about McLaren, other than I hope they start the season ahead.
We'll see.
They're another one of these teams that comes out on the back foot at the beginning. Let's hope they pick up from where they were. Yeah, I mean, they've got a good team.
That's what I wrote down. That's their strength and weakness, is that they're so steady.
Yes.
We know they're good. We know they're solid. We know they'll find something. But you're right. I wonder if they start off slow again.
They can still win if they start off slow.
Mm-hmm.
And that may make for a more entertaining season. But I really hope that this is the season where they come back and they are number 1.
So let's ask this now then, because there's not much more to say. Who is your driver's champion of the year?
I want this to come down to the final race. We're talking 2021 level, 1 point between them nonsense.
Oh, wow.
Ideally, I want it to be a 3-way race.
Oh.
I want 3 people to be fighting for the Drivers' Championship come Abu Dhabi.
Here's my question. Max Lando Hamilton or Max Lando Oscar?
What if I were to tell you
Oh, wow.
Charles Piastri Lawson?
You would be
Lying.
You would be delusional, yeah.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen, no.
It is definitely Max Lando Hamilton that I want in that position.
Do you think Oscar could be that?
I do.
Just not this year.
No, I want him to. I don't think McLaren will allow him to.
If I said to you Max Oscar Hamilton, what would you think? You think they wouldn't allow that?
The only way I see that happening is if Lando absolutely self-destructs this year. It could happen,
Could happen.
but it's going to take a lot for that to happen.
I don't like his my year comment. I told you that already. I don't like it. There was something insecure about it. You've called me out on this a million times, and you're absolutely right every step of the way. He can do no right in my eyes.
Sure.
You said that already. It's just, there's just something about him I just don't see him winning. I wonder if Oscar steps into his place this year.
I would love to see it because I think Oscar is truly one of the generational talents out there. But like we've discussed, he's almost too much of a nice guy to take it.
He showed at times last year, though, he doesn't like it.
Absolutely.
He talked back a few times.
Mm-hmm.
But he's still a sophomore and still young in the sense that he'll have his lulls without McLaren doing anything.
Yes.
So that might be his downfall. But so I think if I was to be a betting man, I would say Lando, Max, maybe Hamilton. So you can't pick it as. So what you're saying is you can't pick it at this moment.
No, I absolutely know who I want to win. I'm just saying, prefacing that with, I want it to be a 3-way fight come Abu Dhabi. That would be an epic season in my mind. I want number 1 in the Drivers' Championship to be Lando. I want him to have his year.
Okay. I don't think it's going to happen. I think Max runs away with it.
Sure.
If he got 9 wins in a down season, I think we should bet on him getting 13. That's my thought process. So Max, to me, is the driver's champion.
So, one other thing I'll mention about Red Bull, as you were doing your bit, I was looking at the launch photos of their car to see, because the reason I wasn't sure, 1-2, is mainly because did they take last year's platform and continue it? An evolution on last year's design, which you and I have hypothesized was a bit of an FU from Newey, right? I'm probably not going to be here, so fuck you guys, you deal with it. Or did they start from scratch? And based on what I can see from the limited photos, and this I found interesting, that as the Red Bull came out, I'm not sure, did you watch the launch?
I didn't.
All the cars kind of rolled down a runway on a movable platform. And usually it was the drivers, the team principal, whatever, coming out with them. Red Bull had a whole flock of people dancing around the car. Very big display of all these people. So no wonder there's no fucking pictures of the car. Everybody's too distracted.
They don't want to give away secrets then, is what you're saying.
Yes, that and their livery, which hides everything. But from what I can gather, it's the same platform.
So there's a poison pill in there somewhere that they're going to have to configure at some point in the season.
Either they've not seen the issue and said, okay, we'll continue to evolve this because we have this massive leap next year. Or they've said, we understand it now. We know how to make it work.
Because Max knows how to make it work. Which to me is something people are underestimating. Is his ability. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not saying you're wrong. I could easily see Lando winning. My money's on Max.
Okay.
So we will see. Before we end it, do you want to go into outliers? Or do you want to talk about Benny? We can save that for the next episode.
I think there's not much to talk about Benny other than the fact that we still hate him and he's a fucking idiot and he needs to go.
Good answer. Cool.
If we want to talk about it later, we can. The outliers topic might get long, but I do want to preface it because I think it's more of a philosophical discussion that we can take throughout the year.
So then let's save it for next episode. But yeah, preface it now.
Okay. So outliers coming from the book Outliers. It's a Malcolm Gladwell book talking about patterns and statistical outliers, right? Why do certain things occur that defy logic, right? One thing he points out in the book is there is a study done at Stanford by, Louis Terman. So he was a psychology professor at Stanford University that ran a study looking at high IQ individuals. And the preface was, if I take the highest IQ individuals and study their progress from young children to adults, I should be looking at the best performing adults available, right? Just simply based on IQ. So he sent a bunch of people out to look for intelligent students, had them tested various IQ tests, and basically selected the highest groups of all these students, figuring, okay, here's a cohort of individuals that should succeed, not paying attention to any other factors than IQ. These kids grow up into teenagers, young adults, go into their careers, and he's identified now that, I have 3 distinct groups. I have high-performing groups that are executives, innovators, highly skilled, highly professional, highly intelligent. Well, they're all intelligent, but high-performing people from this group.
So that's the go-getter leader class you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the A group. The B group is mid-level, management, good at what they do, but they're not rich. They're not the 1%.
Still equal intelligence, though, as a kid to the A group.
Yes. And still currently equal intelligent. They're still very intelligent people.
Okay.
The C group, unemployed, drug addicts, drain on society, some are in jail, some are living on welfare, but equally as intelligent. What sets the 3 groups apart? Right? So by the normal metric at the time, this was done in, I want to say the 70s, but I don't know. The normal metric was high IQ will breed highly successful individuals. But what this study is showing us is that that's not the case. What sets them apart? Right? So this case, IQ is a high IQ gets you to a certain point. But there is a point at which IQ doesn't matter anymore. And this is why I think it's relevant to when we talk about F1, because there's a skill when it comes to driving that gets you into F1, but that's kind of where it stops. You either have what it takes to get there, and then anything over that is a limit or doesn't impact the result, except for the outliers. And who are those outliers? Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Ayrton Senna. What makes them different? And that's what I think you and I need to talk about in between episodes this year, is identifying where these people became the outliers.
So pay attention to each driver throughout the season, how they are performing. See if we see an outlier in them.
No, their current performance doesn't matter. It's how did they get here?
Okay.
Because now that they're in F1, their performance doesn't matter.
Okay.
They're successful in F1 not because of what they're doing today, but because of how they got there.
Okay. You see, I would make the case that some of that is media manipulation, is hype, is placement. But it is a good discussion nonetheless.
But that's a relevant topic if it's related to how they got where they are.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about truly great drivers, And that's one thing we have to agree on is who those people are. Right? So Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher are
agree.
there.
Max, we can agree.
Max, we can agree. At least those three. Because empirically, the data supports that they are the outliers. Senna, I wouldn't rush to put him on there simply because you didn't need as many race wins. You didn't need as much. You didn't need to win as much, basically, in his day because of the unreliability and because of the number of races. You could become champion much earlier. It's not to say he's not a great talent and that he's not potentially an outlier. I just think we need to dig deeper to justify him being in that group.
I think I think certain laps would put him there. Laps we've never seen, like the Monaco lap and like the Donington first lap.
Yes.
I have never seen someone go from fourth, or technically fourth to first, but it was fifth to first because he dropped a position.
Sure.
Anyways, that's a good discussion to have throughout the year.
So keep that in mind. I will refine the overall, but yes.
And I got to read that book now, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers.
Yes.
All right. And on that note, let's call it a night.
Agreed.
We did really good this time around. Condensed it to the point. I'm proud of you, son.
No.
No, that's never happening again.
Remember, I'm the one that knows what I'm doing.
I've always wanted to say that, and I've had no reason to say it. I tried. I'll cut that part out. Anyways, look for us on Spotify and YouTube. It's where we are this year. And please, comment. What do you think? Do we think we're right? Do we think we're off base? Tell us why we're wrong. We'd love to hear it. We encourage critiques and comments.
And I'll take a page out of Nick's book. Tell us what you think about our opinions, but ultimately, we don't care.
We don't care.
They're our opinions, and they're here for us.
Philosophers have ingrained ideas.
Sure.
Like I was actually reading about that. Socrates believed everybody has the knowledge in them. It takes a good person to bring it out of them. I think you helped me bring it out of me. I do think that.
All right. Well, I'm glad I could bring something out of you.
Phrasing. Anyways, good night, everybody.
Good night.